Just before we go deep into this conversation, a very good morning to you, Mr. Kimani.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure having you this morning.
It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you very much for making time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I want us just to look at what is making headlines in the local dailies before we talk about matters regarding Gachagua impeachment. And
Yes.
I want us to begin with the People Daily.
Yes.
Because there's a very, very big story on the top of the People Daily. And it's a story on page 8 on how they say officials in the sports ministry did disregard a presidential directive not to engage private consultants in the AFCON saga. And they say sports ministry Onsource in hot soup over pay deals. Now, before I engage you further, there's one interesting thing about this particular story. And they say sports at ministry. On the spot, a sports principal Secretary, Engineer Peter Jum, senior officials in the ministry, and those of Sports Kenya, Sports Fund, and Academy of Sports over the decision to spend 1 billion shillings. The board comprises of PS Peter Jum, Harry Kimtai of Health, Education's Belio Kipsang, National Treasury's Chris Kipto, and Sports Fund Chairperson, that is Jack Tuwei. Now, Mr. Kimani, it looks like we're in a country where day in, day out, there are scandals worth billions of shillings. And to, spend at least 1 billion shillings in consultancy is...
It is sad to put it this way, but the Kenya Kwanza regime has made 1 billion sound like 1 million. This thing started with the Uhuru government. You remember? Construction of roads, we used to hear of millions per kilometer until President Kenyatta came, and especially with the construction of the express highway, when we started hearing that it is costing us over 2 billion to construct a kilometer of road. It's a very bad thing when you hear that consultation fees are amounting to 1 billion shillings. Then when you think of what 1 billion shilling can do to help in other sectors of economy, and then you wonder, in as much as it might even, let's even assume that the money is even warranted and that whoever was given the consultation really deserved to be paid that much. There's always the question of, was it necessary? Is it the best route we should have followed? And then if it was against the presidential directive, then the question is, under whose authority do you serve? If you can go against the president, do things in contrary to what he ordered you to do as people who serve under him, then it speaks of people who are ready and even unbridled enough to do things even against their boss, as long as maybe it benefits them. The question is, why would we still have people who directly disobey orders from even the president still hanging around in the office?
I mean, then one interesting thing is that they say these officials seem to have taken advantage of, the lacuna that was created by the president, because this happened when the president had disbanded his cabinet and the PSs were responsible. But again, if I'm not wrong, at that time, the Prime CS Musalia Mudavadi was put in charge of all the dockets. Yeah,
he was the one standing in for all the ministers in the government. That means that there isn't anything that should have done or should have happened in a ministry without his explicit authority. And you see, a presidential order stands whether or not there is a cabinet in place or not. If you must go against it, then you can only do it with another order to counter what had been given. And that order could only come from the president, because nobody else can counter the president's order.
Correct.
So there is no justification, whether or not there was a cabinet secretary in charge of sports. As long as there had been an order by the president, anything else is inconsequential.
Okay. Any
attempt or any allocation of funds was firstly in an act of insubordination to the president. Secondly, such use of money must be subjected to public participation, because it is a requirement that in all governance expeditions, people must be involved. Participation of the people is a constitutional process, or it is a constitutional principle in Article 10, sub-Article 2A, right? So you cannot commit $1 billion shillings into consultancy without even asking the will of the people, and when it is even against the order of the president. Those people should have been fired like yesterday.
Well, fair enough. Joining me this morning as well is Mr. Wilson Sosiana. Very good morning to you, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you this morning.
Pleasure to have you, and good morning, our viewers.
Thank you very much. Now, we were talking about this scandal in the Ministry of Sports, where officials did use at least 1 billion shillings in consultancy fees ahead of, preparations for the 2027 African Cup of Nations, because that is an African Cup of Nations tournament that will co-host together with Uganda and Tanzania. And Mr. Sosion, I wanted to ask Mr. Kimani, there's one thing, one key factor here, because they say equally, blame is being laid on the ethnic composition of the sports fund, because this is a sports fund that is made up of 6 individuals. 1, Pius Meto; 2, Peter Toom; 3, Chris Kipto; 4, Belio Kipsang; 5, Jack Tuwei; 6, Harry Kimtai. How comes those in this sports fund board all come from one ethnic composition?
Well, that one is a mistake. That is 1. 2, I think all public expenditure must be subject to audit by the Comptroller and Auditor General. And where there is impropriety, a public officer takes personal responsibility. If indeed there are indicators of misuse and abuse of financial procedures and embezzlement of funds, then the individuals concerned should be put to task. And there is no excuse as to whether a minister is in office or not. Remember, the accounting officers of all ministries are permanent secretaries who really execute the budgets and nothing.
Accounting officers.
Yeah, accounting officers. Ministers have got nothing to do with money. CSS. They are administrative heads of the ministry. So really, I don't see any gap. And all this money is subject to auditing. It doesn't matter. Even if we talk of, even if they're all members of one family sitting in that board, they are guided by the provision of the law and procurement procedures, and I don't think it would be a license for any abuse of office. And whoever is coming up with that narrative, there must also be full evidence. Where we are at the moment in Kenya, the era where we are headed to in terms of governance is that of total transparency and accountability.
Okay.
And those who abuse their offices must be punished, and punished to the extent that they shouldn't even occupy public offices in future. Because if we are preparing for AFCON 2027, it is a big undertaking, it's a huge task that, that indeed a lot of resources will go into it, a lot of logistical organizations, and we need to have the best. And this is going to uplift the image of the country in terms of international stature. And therefore, we cannot squander any opportunity by having 1 or 2 characters who are doing things the wrong way. That would fundamentally be wrong. And I don't think sports is held by 6 people. There are other structures that interact with that arrangement, and therefore we should have the right entities, all of them working together, and we should see the right things being done, a stadium being delivered, the preparations being delivered, and Kenya being ready. And we must have a competitive team also from Kenya.
Fair
Because we
enough.
cannot just host
Okay.
without having a strong Harambee Stars in place. What are we doing to have the strong Harambee Stars in place? What resources does it require?
Fair
What
enough.
is it that needs to be done in the whole of this ecosystem?
Fair
So
enough.
that it's not just about consultancy with 200 million. What consultancy are you doing with 200
Okay,
million?
fair enough. Let's just move forward, because I don't know what you make about that composition, Mr. Kimani Mwangi, in terms of members of that particular board being from one ethnic composition.
I don't know how that came to be, because, but again, as you can see, that board, other than those who've been nominated into it, there are those who are in the board courtesy of the ministries they hold. So there are people who've been seconded to the board from their ministries. And maybe that is why you realize that they more or less all of them come from the same community. However, it is something that should not happen. Every public entity must be a reflection of the face of Kenya.
Okay.
It is something that must be looked into, because that board can hold meetings in their local dialect. But again, does the board consist of 6 people? That's another question, because this could be the officials who are maybe involved in the decision making, but not necessarily all members of the board.
One interesting fact is that 4 of them are actually PSs in different dockets.
So they are in the board
Because the-
on secondment into
PSS
the board.
officers
Yes.
are automatic seats in the board. So what we need to be told, rightly, is the full composition of the board.
Yes.
Is it made up of 6 people, 7, 8, 9, 10? Or somebody is just cherry picking members of one community and,
Yes.
and placating it as
Okay.
the members of the board? I think
Fair
some
enough.
fairness,
I'll-
some fairness
Even as-
in terms of individuals who represent
Okay.
officers of line ministries, and by coincidence, they are PSS, and therefore the office must sit in that board, and therefore they sit as individuals, and it has happened before, and it
by
does
the way,
happen.
And by the way, it is also good to note that it isn't always necessary that the PS must be the person who appears in the board.
Yeah,
The
you can
PS
always
as a
send
representative
representation,
can
yeah.
appear. So then, again, could it have been that somebody just chose to put some names there with a hidden
Cherry
agenda?
pick, yes.
In fact, all of them, these are the board members. Our oversight board members are Jackson Tuwe, who's the chairperson, Peter Tum, who's a member, Belio Kipsang, who's a member, Harry Kimchai is a member, Mr. Simeon Bor is a member, and Mr. Guyo Bor, who's also a member. Those are the members of this
There
particular
are how
board.
many?
There are 7.
And how are the members appointed?
That is one
No,
other thing that we should...
yes.
Yes.
Tell us, which law?
We'll look into that.
Yes,
I'll
give
follow,
us
up and
the
look,
law.
I'll follow up and look
Give
into
us
that.
the law.
I was just confirming based on what you've said
Because-
in terms of we have to look at the entire composition of the board.
Because, be it as it may, as you have presented, there is a law, there could be a law that appoints those particular officers occupied by those individuals.
But question is, law or not, the question at the table is, they are there. They are the officials who were recommended for that board, and they oversaw the use of these 1 billion Kenya shillings for the consultancy
Now the issue
fees.
is, let's forget about the ethnic question. We may
Okay.
not be able to answer right
Fair
now.
enough.
But then let's deal with now the impropriety.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Mr. Kimani Mwangi, moving away from matters sports fund and the 1 billion used in consultancy fees. Yesterday, Wajir Governor Ahmed Abdullahi took over from Governor Anwar Guru as the chairperson of the Council of Governors. But one key thing that I picked from that handover, because yesterday as well was Waiguru's last address, and that was the State of Devolution address, the annual State of Devolution address. And one key thing that I picked is that the governor still lament over failure to disburse funds. They say the Treasury did not disburse 30.8 billion Kenya shillings for June to the county governments. And they say this greatly hindered the budget implementation process for the counties. So I mean, 14 years after the promulgation of the Kenyan Constitution rather, are these issues that we should still be talking about, failure to disburse funds?
I wouldn't call it failure to disburse funds. I would call it delayed disbursement of funds. But again, it is obvious that when an economy is not doing so well, then such things are expected. That it isn't always necessary that there is money when money is needed. Because how government survive is all the money that is collected from the tax regime is what the government uses to meet all the expenditure of the government. So yes, there is delayed disbursement of funds, but that doesn't mean that the fund won't be disbursed. I would, like it has always happened, whenever such a thing occurs, the governors would sit down with the treasury and they would agree on something to make sure that there are some funds available to them so that they don't reach at a point where they are unable to give or to offer services there should be, that they should offer to the people. So it is not something new. It is something that shouldn't be there 14 years down the line. We should have been able to have handled that element of our economy. But again, it is also good to note that with the overborrowing that happened in the previous regime and that also is ongoing in the current regime and the burden of repayment of those loans, it is not a wonder that the governors may not have the money when they need the money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Election of or appointment of the governor from Wajir, that was very good. What I like about what the governors do is that they are very considerate on making sure that there is rotational leadership.
In fact, what Governor Barasa said, the governor of Kakamega County said, they did not, you know,
it was unanimous.
It was through consensus as well.
Which is a good thing. I think, you know, politics is a very emotive issue. So this time round, we had it in Mount Kenya. They produced the chair of the governor. Now you see now this time we've been given a governor from the northeastern. We've been given a governor from the western at some point. Now we are looking forward to having a governor coming from the eastern, another governor maybe from Nyanza, which is a good thing. Because people must be made to feel that they too can produce somebody who will rise at the helm. Okay. Maybe it is something that we need to think about and even adopt along the way for presidency too. That if Mount Kenya produces a president today, if tomorrow Rift Valley has produced a president, maybe we should have a law that says that we should wait for other communities or other regions to produce a president as well before they are allowed to produce a cabinet. Look at even at the AUC. This time around, it is time for East Africa region to produce the chair of the AUC. The other time it was the North. There was a time the Western did it. I think that's the way the way things are happening in Africa. Maybe we need to look at and ask, is it something we should try even at our national politics, especially with the presidency, so that every community in Kenya feels that we too have produced, or one of our sons have risen to the helm of the politics of the Republic.
Fair enough. I actually think you've mentioned Eastern because if you look at the composition of former chairpersons of this council, because Rift Valley has had the opportunity through Isaac Ruto.
Yes.
Central has had the opportunity through Martin Ombora, Anne Waiguru, as well as Peter Munya. The Coast has had an opportunity through Salim Vuria, though he only served for a short stint before handing over. And we've also, I think we've also seen Western through Wycliffe Oparanya. So it's a good move, as you say. Mr. Session, just to engage you on the issue of revenue, because governors say in as much as there's been an issue of failure to disburse funds or delayed disbursement, like Mr. Kimani Mwangi says, counties have made strides in on-source revenue. And just to look at the figures, Turkana County surpassed their target by 241%, Viga by 136%, and Kirinyaga County by 118.4% in terms of on-source revenue. And then this goes a long way in helping counties sustain their operations.
Yes. The reason why devolved units were created was to fast-track development at that level, and also devolve some of the functions that had been hanging out here at the national to the counties. And if you look at the schedule of the Constitution, there are specific functions that are devolved to the counties, particularly health, agriculture, water, and some key sectors. And for those particular mandates to be executed by the counties, they need money, and they need a strong governance structure in place. If there is anything that we got it right in the Constitution, was devolution and establishing devolved governments. And the only challenge is resources. And to ensure that the gap in resources are bridged, then the counties were encouraged to have their own generated revenue. There are some counties that, of course, surpass those targets, and they actually can literally run the counties using their own generated revenue, like Nairobi City. They will be able to do very many things. In fact, Nairobi City can even run education. Some of the functions that are, in quotes, national functions, but indeed necessary to be done and can be done by devolved units, like education, building schools, and running education. Nairobi County can do it. So it is good progress if indeed we are reporting great success of meeting targets in collection of revenue at that particular level to bridge the gap. Because the counties are not just to be non-producing consumers. You see, when you become a non-producing consumer, then it means you are not progressing. It's an indicator that there are no much economic activities and growth within the counties. All counties are supposed to compete as entities of serious economic activities and growth. And because of that, they should be able to generate revenue to meet part of their budgets. The budget deficit, that cannot be met by the national government. And the allocation from the national government, of course, we have seen the challenges when the economy is weak, when the revenue collection is weak in the country, particularly with the collapse of Finance Bill 2024-2025, then it is not going to be easy for KRA to collect adequate taxes to finance the budget. So the whole of this financial year, 2024-2025, revenue collection will be weak and the economy will be limping. And all entities will suffer, including devolved units. They will suffer from, number one, reduction, and we have seen the equal share allocation of revenue. It will reduce. And then number two, it will be affected by delays. That is expected. That is expected. It is out of our own actions because the popular uprising by Kenyans to stop the finance bill succeeded. And we've not had a solution. The country has not had a solution to the same, so it will continue experiencing delays and reduced revenues. So I think going into the future, as a country, we must strengthen the revenue collection across the board while sealing loopholes of corruption and ensuring that the appropriation, that is a budget, the delivery of services to the people feel it. And you see, when Kenyans feel and they get the value for the taxes that they're paying, they will have no problem when there is an upward trajectory in the rise of taxation in the country.
Fair enough.
I had given earlier on, Americans are very proud people to pay taxes. They know it's a good thing to pay taxes because the taxes gives you return in terms of value of services. And I think that is what we need in Kenya. I think the advocates of stopping the finance bill missed the point. They should have focused on demanding for quality service delivery from the revenue that is collected. And if we are able to hit the target of ensuring that there is quality service delivery, particularly healthcare, we should not be talking about confusion even in implementation of UHC should be done. We should not be talking about inaccessible to education. If that is done, then we'll have no problem with revenue collection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sosion. On that note, we just wrap up the newspaper review. I know there are very many other stories that I wanted us to talk about, but time is not on our side. We just take a brief breather now, and then we'll come back with the issue at hand, the main thing happening today, that is the impeachment debate of the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, especially after his address to the nation yesterday. Don't go away.
Yeah, Mr. DJ.
Lucky. When it comes to playing the best music videos, we've got you covered.